But we have something going on in the Middle East at the moment that I wonder whether it's actually going to make us pay attention to some of these challenging issues more, or is it actually going to harden the lines about protectionism? We have countries that were large producers of food, were large exporters of food, that for various reasons, either because of crop failures or because climate change, have seen a drastic fall in their own production of food. They want to keep the food at home, so they are in fact imposing export bans on food. In the countries that were in receipt of them are now seeing the impact of that, which is increasing food price, and that triggers social disruption in circumstances where people were already under constraint. So is that actually going to force us, is what's going on in the Middle East, going to force us to think more seriously about these issues, or is it actually going to have the reverse effect, and we're all going to draw a little fence around what we're doing and harden the lines and make the situation worse?
Can I go quickly back to the issue of subsidies? I think in 2007 or 2008, the OECD countries, so the club of the rich developed countries of the world, spent somewhere around $200 billion on different types of subsidies for their agriculture and related agriculture-based industries. The proposal that came out of the G8 and the G20 in L'Aquila is just a fraction of those $200 billion. However, those resources somehow have not been made available. No? So we have now a great plan. We have now national governments in Africa, in other parts of the world, that developed comprehensive food security plans and the related investment plan. They don't have all the resources required, but those spending $200 billion in subsidies have not been able to provide the resources that require for us to support those countries make a push forward. I think in a way we are all advocates of fair trade, no? And fair trade includes open markets, limitation or no export restrictions, which is responsible, in my opinion, for the spike on food prices now and in 2007, 2008. But fair trade should also be understood as all producers playing on the basis of the same rules. So if I can provide the subsidies to protect the production of a farmer in Europe, but I cannot do it in Africa, or I cannot do it in Asia. This is coming very much to once again, agriculture is not WFP's field, but it comes very much to play as we try to use our role and our mandate in the context of the broader food security. And one of the programs we are piloting in 21 countries around the world, spearheaded by the Gates Foundation, and today we have other partners working with us on that, is to find ways of connecting small farmers with markets. And what we do is, because we are a big buyer of food commodities, and we spend about $1 billion in the developing countries every year buying commodities, is using a portion of that demand to engage the small farmers and then bring other partners to work on the supply side and the ex-gate side. But the moment we need to create a situation where the moment where WFP is no more there, that farmer can still get a fair price for his or her produce, in most cases, her produce, and have a sustainable market state. But then they are competing with cheap cereal and other agricultural produce that comes from somewhere else where there is a buffer and an assurance of risk protection that we cannot put in place.
Yeah, go ahead. I just
Yes.
think this is connecting the dots, because when I hear you use the word security, it comes right back to Alistair's point. I think when we see the events in Tunisia or Libya or whatever it may be, Egypt, we know what's at the heart of some of those riots. Certainly in Tunisia, that was all about food. And it certainly is about poverty in the other places on some level. We'll just set aside crazy dictators for a moment. But you know, people really are motivated because they have fundamental needs. When we start talking about this issue, as I think people quite wisely are doing now, in terms of food security, rather than helping poor, starving children, I think it actually helps focus people's minds. This is a security issue. This is where it becomes real to you. It's not just the poor, starving child that is in some other country and therefore it doesn't affect me. When you see the kind of political foment and activity and governments falling and chaos ensuing, you start to say, okay, this now affects me. This is now in my world. This may spill here. I may not be able to get the oil I need to run my car if Gaddafi decides to set the fields on fire and work through, you know, you have to start focusing on those issues. So I actually think when these crises like this happens, it is educative in the first place. People are, you know, they may not have heard of those countries or may not have focused. And when they read a little bit about why and where this came from and what happens, then it starts to connect for people that we got to do something about that in a real way, or we're all going to be impacted by it.
I'm mindful of the time, and I know that there will be questions from the audience. There are actually 2 microphones, one on either side of the room. If you wanted to pose a question, do you want to walk towards one of the microphones, and we may be able to take them? See, I knew as soon as I said that there would be a mass of people rush towards the microphones.
But Mr. President, can I say that as we look at some of the impediments the developed countries put in the way of developing countries, we must also look at intra-developing country policies. Sometimes it's misaligned policies that also cause some of these things. If it's banning exports or whatever, sometimes they haven't put the right emphasis even on agriculture policy. If you take Africa, there is the CADIP, which is the Comprehensive African Agriculture Development Program, which said that every African country should put about 10% of its budget into agriculture with the hope of getting 6% growth. There are only about 23 out of the 53 countries as of now which have been able to do that. And if you have about 60 to 70% of your people working in agriculture and you don't invest in that, how do you reduce poverty? How do you reduce hunger? So sometimes it's misaligned policies. Intra-Africa trade, for instance, is very little because of non-tariff barriers, not because of tariffs, but because of so much regulation, so many things that will happen that doesn't allow the free flow of goods and services. I traveled from Abidjan to Accra some years ago, and I bet you there were 27 stops on the way. This is a very short distance. You stop and then, I don't know, the driver gets down and does something, I don't know. And how do you move goods and services when you have to stop 27 times on the way? So sometimes we have to also look at our own policies and stop also blaming also developed countries all the time. I know there is the blame on OECD for some subsidies level, but most of the things are also our fault because That is the reason why we can't have a lot of intra-regional trade ourselves. If we begin to trade among ourselves, because Malawi produce excess maize through the subsidy program, selling that excess maize even to the next country was a big problem. But why should it happen?
I would like to agree with Kojo. I have been stuck on the same road too, 27 times. But I would also like to say that, put another perspective, and you mentioned Malawi, which is a country that is also dear to my heart, and its ability to produce and become self-sufficient in maize, I think has been a miracle. And basically what the president did was to ignore any of the advice from the World Bank or the African Development Bank and started to subsidize fertilizer prices. And by that simple action, he was able, the country was able to feed itself, where before, many, many years, there's been a cycle of famine, floods, and natural disasters that have afflicted Malawi. And I agree with you. I think that sometimes the advice that we think from outside may be appropriate is in fact not appropriate at all. And I think we have to be very careful as to how in our interactions and the advice and the support that countries need, not just in Africa but elsewhere, to make themselves self-sufficient. We have to be careful and couch them and understand what are the local conditions. And another example I will give you is in one country, which will be nameless, the government agreed to lift any import duties and tariffs and VAT on the equipment and the premixes used to fortify flour, and also to carry out the food control system as well. And somebody in the Ministry of Finance turned around and reimposed the tariffs, which effectively killed the fortification program in that particular country for about 4 years. And indeed, today it is still crippled because it's not able to produce food that is nutritious. And I think that's the other point I would like to make, is we're dealing with, it's all very well to produce food in large quantities, but I would pose this question, and I'd pose it back to you. And the question is, are we, working in the fields of agriculture and food processing, allowing the countries to produce the right type of food? And what I mean by that, I will give one example, and that is maize. Historically, maize was not widely consumed in Africa. It was imported. And it supplanted sorghum and millet. And nutritionally, sorghum and millet is far superior to maize. And part of the reason for that is that maize is very bitter to eat. The bran is very bitter. And what happens is that people dehull the maize before they mill it into a flour and then eat it. And that dehulled maize is probably about 95% starch and very little else. So I would pose this question for you while you're here for the next few days. Are we providing the right type of food? I don't think so yet. Thank you.
But I think, are we also providing the right advices?
No.
Many a time, for me, having dealt with so many of these, many a time somebody finishes first degree in a Canadian or American university, then he's sent as technical advisor. Right from school, technical advisor to go and advise somebody who has worked for about 20 years or so. Please, let them get a little bit more experience before you send them over.
Now, I haven't researched enough into your CV to be absolutely certain that you didn't go straight from your graduate degree at the University of Guelph to go into... You needn't answer that. Can I take the question from Thomas over here?
I guess I'll jump in while I can. My name's Thomas. I'm a student here at the University of Guelph. I was recently involved with organizing a conference on obesity-related issues here at Guelph, and I was just wondering if panelists could perhaps comment on that link there, because during our conference, it was no surprise to me that hunger or malnutrition issues were continuously brought up. And I think just the fact that there's around 1 billion people that are chronically hungry and 1 billion people that are chronically overweight and obese, that I think says something. So perhaps this will be a topic that'll continue on through the conference this weekend, but I was just wondering if the panelists could comment on that and maybe some of the challenges too that would be involved in addressing those two issues together. Thank you.
Quentin.
I'd like to comment on that. One of the countries that we do a lot of work in is in Egypt. Egypt has this dilemma. You have about 40 million people living on less than $1 a day. You have a subsidized food program, as well as many other subsidies. And yet, probably the level of obesity is rising at alarming rates. And it's up until the revolution in Egypt, it's been a challenge for the Ministry of Health to deal with. And I think there will be other countries, particularly in other parts of the Middle East, where this is becoming a significant problem, and it needs to be addressed. That the people who have eat too much, and the people who don't have eat too little.
Or the wrong kind of thing.
The wrong-
That's the
the
problem.
wrong-
If it's
yeah.
90% starch,
Yes.
you can be fat and hungry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the wrong time.
Is it time for us to implement a fat tax on? I'm only partly joking. I mean, we actually have obesity rising in many parts of the world, not just Egypt. Here in North America, in Europe, it's a major problem. Should we be thinking about trying to do something from a policy standpoint?
You probably
Please don't
should
put
now
rules in for that.
taking into account over time the costs on your health programs, the diabetes issues, and so on. So probably you should. Probably I will have to pay a tax, but you should, and maybe the revenue of that tax should be used to support nutrition programs, fortification, new products, more advanced products that are used today to address issues of malnutrition in the different segments of the life cycle.
And maybe we don't start with policy, but maybe, for example, Michelle Obama has been doing a tremendous amount in raising public awareness about the issue. And this whole, what we call the paradox of hunger and obesity is not well understood. And we really need to have conferences like you were referring to about obesity that finds those overlaps and those issues that we need to be looking at.
Question over on this side.
Hello. Oh. It's amazing how hard my heart is beating. You know, it's like boom, 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 boom. I feel nervous. Anyway, thank you so much to everyone. About corn, I'm from Nicaragua, so don't touch my tortillas, okay? I want my corn. I have two things to say. The first thing, I'm not a scientist. You know, I'm just a student at the School of Languages and Literatures. But I assume that in order to produce food and digest food, you need water. So if you see any correlation between issues of water safety with food safety, how do we make that? Does this make the food safety even more complicated, or also to provide water in order to produce a digested food? The second thing, I just want to make a remark about the remarks from the Ambassador Jacobson. I just came from a meeting that didn't make me very happy, so I was in need of some happiness. When the ambassador said that the US is committed to end world hunger, I was laughing so hard. Thank you so much for saying that. You know, and maybe I'm not being very respectful to the ambassador, but the US was not respectful to my country either. Thank you.
Let's take up the issue of water. and ask the members of the panel to address the issue of water and the relationship between food and food security.
It's so crucial, and I will go to my Afghanistan experience on this one, that of course the NATO countries went in to do battle and all of those things, and to help build schools and to help make sure the kids got to school. But one of the signature projects that Canada has been involved with, along with the Americans for a very long time now, more than a decade, is the Dala Dam. And when you fly over that, which we had the opportunity to do, and making that functional, and it's not easy because it's hard to get people with expertise into work, into a war zone, and all of these things, but you can literally start to see the green spreading out in the middle of a desert. And I just don't think we can ever forget that. It's kind of so core, we don't even really talk about it, but it is really at the heart, and we have to do those kinds of things along with the other programs we've got.
I think water is going to be a very limiting factor for agricultural production in the future. It is now, but it's going to be more severe in the future with climate change and the other things. So we really need to pay attention to water. Africa irrigates just about 4% of its cropland. How do you raise 2 crops, for instance? How do you fight poverty by just irrigating 4%? And water, as I said, is becoming scarcer and scarcer. So we need to invest more in water to be able to get the food that we need. And then also, it's not just any type of water, but good water. We've seen peri-urban agriculture where people are raising vegetables and they are using all kinds of wastewater to water these plants and selling the vegetables to people in the city. So we really have to pay attention to the issue of water. But I think we have been putting emphasis on just food and food and food. Food is just more than food. This is why the obesity thing came in, because we are not putting emphasis on nutrition. We should rather be saying food and nutrition security. The two must go hand in hand. Just filling your stomach is not good enough. In some societies, it's rather the poor who are putting on weight because they don't know the right type of food to eat.
Exactly.
So education becomes very important. How do we do education to be able to do that? And we get people doing extension, going to talk about technology. Just put in one sentence about what to eat, what good things to eat, you know, and people will feed well, get the good nutrients, get all the vitamins that Quentin has been working on. So we really have to emphasize on the nutritional part. It's not just feeding yourself with so much rice, so much tortilla or whatever, and that sort of things.
Let's take a question on this side.
My name is James Achua Megashi. I teach economics here at the University of Guelph. I'm originally from Ghana, and usually when I talk to my Ghanaian friends, I tell them that we should focus on ourselves in trying to deal with our problems. But since I'm here in a Western country, I'm going to blame the West for one more time. So my issue has to do with Madame Michaëlle Jean said something about hunger being partly a governance issue. And Senator Pamela Warlin said Tunisia's revolution was about food. About a month ago, I went to Scotiabank to buy an international money order for $4,000 US. And the lady there was asking me a lot of irritating questions. But I understood why she was doing that. What work do I do? Do I have investment in the US? All sorts of things. So even for $4,000, there was all these security questions. Why is it that Western countries allow corrupt leaders in the developing world, if food security is about governance, to deposit millions and sometimes billions of dollars in banks, and these are not regulated? When in the aftermath of September 11th, when the US and the Western countries wanted to fight the flow of the funds that go to terrorists, Al-Qaeda and other organizations, they cut the flows now because they thought that was what was funding them. Food security is about distribution, is about allocation, is about resources. So I think this hypocrisy must stop. That's my question.
I don't know what to say about this. I just do think that you know, the generosity of the developed countries is, the impact is powerful. It may not be enough. Maybe you don't like some of the policies of the governments in the United States or Canada, but the contributions have been really important. And yes, we can do it better, but I don't think it's really helpful to be dismissive of those that are really trying to step up and do something, and we will learn how to do it better.
Question over on this side.
Hello. Several prominent speakers and scholars have publicly criticized the West's current policy of aid commitments to Africa, citing transparency, dependency, government accountability, and general financing issues. Andrew Mwenda, who is a free speech activist and prominent journalist from Uganda, focuses specifically on the dependency of developing countries on financial aid and the repercussions to the local government legitimacy. While Dambisa Moyo, who is an Oxford and Harvard-educated economist and former consultant to the World Bank, author of the book Debt Aid, has published her concerns about financial transparency and accountability issues, and the observation that international aid may have actually compounded poverty, hunger, and governance problems in many developing countries, and specifically in her home country of Zambia. Do these concerns represent a sober second thought about the legitimacy and motivations for Western involvement in developing countries? And furthermore, should we seriously consider stopping all further aid to allow countries to develop without potentially unwanted and unintended interference from Western countries and indigenous developments?
I want to take that.
Ramiro, why don't you try?
That one is a tough one. I would say that obviously countries need to cooperate among themselves and leverage the comparative advantages they have, no? So in that sense, you cannot stop all the relationship between two different groups of countries only because there are challenges. What you need to do is to try to address those challenges and issues related with good governance, accountability, transparency are evident, a key element for that relationship to maintain. But you cannot have a disengagement of any of the two parts of that equation, no? Because then we are living in two different worlds that do not speak with each other and do not relate to each other, no? But indeed, you cited several books, and I hope you have read The Bottom Billion from Paul Collier. And if you have not, you should read, because Paul Collier, who is a former World Bank and a professor in the Oxford University, dealing with issues of development, identifies a series of traps that beyond the poverty trap that Jeffrey Sachs had identified and described, he identifies a series of other traps that contribute to the challenges of some countries to develop. And one of the key traps is indeed the governance trap, no? And we were speaking about Malawi. The trap is, particularly in Africa, is if you are a landlocked country. But those challenges should not move us away from addressing those issues. Otherwise, I think with the increase of absolute numbers of hungry, poor in the world, we would all also be disengaging. No matter the efforts, we are not able to reach the goal. No, it's because probably we are providing the wrong advice, or we are putting in place the wrong policies, or we have the wrong fair trade arrangements. But we need to keep engaged and addressing those issues.
That was the reason why maybe I was emphasizing on intra-developing country policies themselves. I think we should pay a lot of attention to the issues of governance. Development is really driven by governance. Without good governance, I don't see how countries develop. If you don't have the opportunity to even comment on policies of your own countries, how do you develop? In some places, you can't even speak about the president. You can't speak about any policies, otherwise you'll be arrested. And I think we should make it so open that people can do whatever that they can do. My country, Ghana, has done so well in the last years or so because of the open democracy that we have. If you are in Ghana and you listen to the radio, you will really see anything at all they can say and about anybody, and nobody will be arrested. And that is what makes people develop, because everybody gets the chance to participate in governance. It's not only a few people who are elected or appointed cabinet ministers. So we need to make sure that governance is driving the whole development process instead of just allowing a few people to be able to do the sort of thing that they were doing. And the idea that somebody said about putting monies abroad is also very important. As soon as somebody is deposed, then countries are then putting the stakes there that you can't withdraw money, you can't do this. Why did you allow it to happen in the first place? When people you are now saying have 20 billion, have so many, how are you going to spend that money, one person, with 20 million or all those things that they mentioned? But they allow these things to happen. Now then the countries will say, we are putting embargo, restrictions and all of these things. This is after the fact, ex post. Let's do this ex ante so that they never even happen in the first place.
That's the message.
I need to remind everybody that we do have probably a large number of people watching us on the web, and so in due deference to the multitude, I'm going to take a question from the web. I'm able to do so because there are two screens down here, and it has the questions rolling round all the time. Unfortunately, it's stopped on one at the moment. So the questioner asks, and in fact there are others that have come in that are similar to this, but it talks about the fact that at the recent G20 summit held in Toronto, a great deal of effort was put towards trying to address issues of food security. But at the same time as the G20 was working on these, there were violent protests outside by people who were arguing about the need to address hunger and poverty issues. And so the questions coming in on the web are really, how do we get everybody on the same page? If we're both arguing about hunger and poverty, how do we get everybody to the same place so that we actually have all of our energies channeled to do something about it, rather than having one faction over here trying to do something and another faction over here believing that they have the way to be able to resolve this?
I think part of it is leadership, obviously. Although the Millennium Development Goals, we've not made the progress that we wish that we could have made by this point in time, I think having that benchmark, as Madame Jean mentioned, I think President Obama has called for ending child hunger in America by 2015. It's pushing and trying to encourage people to have a common goal and set an agenda that will mark progress toward those goals.
I am very mindful of the time, and I'm going to take one last question from Emelisa, and then we will need to wrap up. So.
Good afternoon. I'm Emelisa Callejas from Honduras. I really appreciate that we have this summit, and I see that we are addressing truth that we don't talk in other summits, and that's very valuable. I will talk a little bit of what Michaëlle Jean said about the laboratory for hundreds of projects, because that's exactly what has happened to Honduras. In the last years, we have had millions of efforts and millions of dollars. And 3, 4, 5 years after, somebody that owns the money or decides decisions say, no, this didn't result, we're going to try another thing. But we didn't give it time. Why don't we feedback? Why don't we, like a large business, you don't change your product every 4 years. You better your product, but not change completely your product because a think tank thought that we have to change it. We would be out of hunger many years ago. But anyway, the help has been important, don't take me wrong. The other thing that concerns me, that when the World Food Program say that we have invested $200 billion using the world for subsidies, that worries me because the ones that will go tomorrow and hear our intervention, you will hear of an NGO that is working in Honduras, and in 6 months, with $1,200, took a community out of hunger, put the community in a situation not only of self-sufficiency, but of having enough to sell and market their product. And now they have dignity to begin with, self-esteem, but they are having more tilapia ponds of their own. So if we did that in 6 months with $1,200 in a small community of the least favored of the world, because these are the pech that indigenous, that even in Honduras are the poorest of the poor. Then my question goes, we have been throwing millions of dollars in the world out the tubes. Our United Nations, are the World Food Programs, is FAO. Are they going to be able to change their frame of mind, but also their elephant structures to meet the need of are we going to really try to fight against hunger? Because it's much, much easier and much, much less expensive than what the studies say. And I invite you to hear Honduras outreach tomorrow, that you will see a model that works in 6 months and with $1,200 per community.
Thank you. I was actually going to end by asking the panel if they thought there was hope. And perhaps, Emelisa, what you have done is to describe the kind of hope that we should all have by inciting direct community action. But does anyone want to make a closing remark? You have about 20 seconds.
I was just going to say that I fully agree, and maybe I was misunderstood. It's not that we spend $200 billion, it's that the developed countries spent $200 billion inside their own frontiers to subsidize their agriculture. It's not that we spend $200 billion. I have 20 seconds, but I will have a chance to come back to that issue during the summit. But we agree with you fully.
I'm just going to say I'm very hopeful about projects like that, but these things are not mutually exclusive. Yeah. We had a program, Canada had a program in Afghanistan where we gave war widows a chicken, a live chicken. We also gave them a $50 or $100 microfinance loan. And if that chicken had 1 egg, they fed their family, and if it had 2, they fed their neighbor, and if it had 3, they set up a shop. out here and created a business. So those are absolutely the solutions, the small things in many situations, but we have to have a bigger picture too.
But I would say that sitting in Canada and the ambassador of the US is also here, I would say that we need a lot of coordination in aid, if there is going to be aid. I worked for the Ministry of Food and Agriculture a little bit in Ghana, and then you see people coming to you. One day you may get about 6 or 7 missions coming, and everybody has come with a program. And you get confused at the end of the day, what is happening? The US has Feed the Futures, Canada may have Feed the Countries, somebody may have Feed the Continent, another person may have this. Why don't we meet and then decide that we should feed the people so that everybody is contributing to it?
Ambassador Jacobson, eminent discussants, friends and colleagues, our time has come to an end. Today we have been challenged by the immensity of world hunger, but I think we've also been empowered. We've had the opportunity to reflect on how human beings can commit to social justice and be inspired to take action. On behalf of all of us, I would like to thank our eminent discussants for sharing with us their wisdom and insights and their hope. Thank all of you for being here with us today, and your presence and your passion speaks volumes for the future. I would now like to call upon the Chancellor of the University of Guelph.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. Ladies and gentlemen, the Senate of the University of Guelph has indicated that they wish to honor Madame Jean with an honorary degree. Unfortunately, owing to her schedule, it was not possible to arrange this ceremony during the routine convocations. So, with your indulgence today, we would like to have a small, spontaneous ceremony right here. It will last only a few moments. If you have to leave, do, but you should really stay around because convocations are fun. So I am pleased to open a special convocation ceremony for the conferment of an honorary degree.
Madam Chancellor, on the recommendation of the Senate of the University of Guelph, it is a great honor to present to you the candidate Michaëlle Jean for the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa. The Right Honourable Michaëlle Jean concluded her term as the 27th Governor-General of Canada on the 30th of September 2010. A truly respected social activist for women and youth, Madame Jean made it her mandate to ensure that the Governor-General's office was a place where dialogue prevailed and the words of citizens were heard. Madame Jean was born in Port-au-Prince in Haiti and emigrated to Canada at a young age with her family, fleeing the dictatorial regime of the time. After earning a Master of Arts degree in comparative literature at the University of Montreal, Madame Jean continued her studies at the universities of Perugia, Florence, and the Catholic University of Milan in Italy. Through her studies and her world travels, she became fluent in 5 languages: French, English, Italian, Spanish, and Haitian Creole. It was during her studies in Montreal that Madame Jean began her lifelong dedication to improve the lives of victimized women and children. She worked for 8 years with Quebec shelters and transition homes for abused women, and actively contributed to the establishment of a network of emergency shelters. At the same time, she spearheaded a groundbreaking study on women as victims in abusive relationships. Michaëlle Jean's sense of social commitment, along with her interest in national and international politics, led her to a high-profile career in journalism. Her journalistic achievements earned her numerous honors, including the Human Rights League of Canada's Merit Award, a Gemini Award, and the inaugural Amnesty International Canada Journalism Award. During her tenure as Governor-General, Madame Jean lived up to both her mandate and her journalistic roots, adopting breaking down solitudes as her motto and encouraging youth dialogue on a host of issues, both national and international in scope. In 2008, she established the Order of Canada Merit Mentorship Program to provide an opportunity for young Canadians and members of the Order to unite in a spirit of reciprocity, one in which generations can learn from one another and create relationships of trust and sharing. Madame Jean currently leads the Special Envoy to Haiti with the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. Her unique experience and dedication to Haiti as her home country, as well as her commitment to educational and cultural initiatives, will make her invaluable to Haitian reconstruction efforts. In Canada, through the Michaëlle Jean Foundation, which uses art and creativity to encourage and promote citizen engagement among youth from underprivileged, rural, and northern communities across Canada, she continues to make an invaluable impact. For her outstanding service and dedication to Canada and her tireless commitment to social justice and dialogue, it is my privilege to request, Madam Chancellor, that you confer upon the Right Honourable Michaëlle Jean the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa.
By the authority of the Senate of the University of Guelph, I admit you now to the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa. Congratulations. It's nice that it goes the other way. Last time I was getting this one. Thank you. That's the actual citation. That's the part you have framed. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I will invite Dr. Michaëlle Jean to make the convocation address.
Merci infiniment. Vous savez, c'est un moment très émouvant pour moi, d'autant plus que cet honneur m'est conféré après ce moment que nous avons passé ensemble pour une discussion fort inspirante et qui me restera longtemps en mémoire et qui m'a nourri profondément compte tenu de la tâche immense qui m'incombe en qualité d'envoyé spécial de l'UNESCO pour Haïti. I want to say thank you so much. Conferring upon me the degree of Doctor of Laws is such an honor. And let me say, President Sommerly, that I am even more touched by this gesture because it comes from a world-class institution of higher learning that has always strived to inculcate the notions of civic responsibility and public good among its students and faculty. These notions have always animated my thoughts and my actions from my time as a starry-eyed undergraduate student and women's rights activist in Montreal to my years as a journalist and, of course, as 27th Governor General and Commander-in-Chief of Canada, our wonderful country. To me, the idea of helping those in need and striving also tirelessly in favor of social justice, human rights, and social awareness is inextricably linked to the very act of thinking critically and the pursuit of rational dialogue. And this is what we have been doing in the last hour. And it is the very raison d'être of knowledge institutions such as the University of Guelph. Your motto, changing lives, improving life, like my motto, briser les solitudes, breaking down solitudes, is a powerful call to action. And yours speaks directly to the crucial bond that connects academic engagement with deeper civic imperatives. For both mottos remind us of our responsibility to build healthy relationships, stronger communities, more compassionate nations, and a more fraternal world. I believe in this ethic of caring and sharing, and it must be nurtured by all sectors of our society, including academic institutions like this one. And let me tell you that it is for this reason that I deeply believe that access to quality education should never be a privilege reserved for an elite. Education should be the preserve of an entire society. And that is what drives me in my crusade to help refound the Haitian education system through my new role as UNESCO Special Envoy for Haiti. Haiti is the country of my birth, where I spent much of my childhood. And now, to which I can bring a contribution from a Canadian perspective, from Canada's perspective, my adopted country. If I agreed to campaign tirelessly everywhere in support of Haiti, it is because I can no longer bear to hear about the resilience of the Haitian people. It sounds as if they were put on this earth only to recover from one crisis, one tragedy, one ordeal to the other. Resilience is but the last resort before dying. My dream is that we give more recognition to the Haitian people for its capacity to create, its capacity to think, to invent, to imagine, to do, to produce, and to reach beyond itself. You know, I can still remember my grandmother repeating endlessly, "Don't forget, education is the key to freedom." Her aphorism still rings true in the Haiti of today, where access to quality education is everyone's first aspiration. I would say Haitians find unity in their hunger for knowledge and training. But the vast majority remains afflicted by cruelly defective schools. For Haitians, one of the worst calamities is that many of the country's regions lack schools and hundreds of thousands of children lack schooling. As you can imagine, the situation was only aggravated by the tragic earthquake last year that destroyed 5,000 schools, including 2 universities, that killed hundreds of teachers and students. So the task is immense. Making education accessible in Haiti is not merely a question of building new infrastructure. It requires devising national curricula, training teachers, creating academic programs, and establishing an entire education system that is public, universal, and of quality. And that is why I encourage all of you students in this room tonight to please take a moment to acknowledge how lucky and privileged you are. Millions of people around the world can only dream of having the chance of attending school. And yet, through circumstances that are not of their own doing, they are deprived of this inalienable right. And dear friends, education is a matter of justice. It is a matter of equity that confers clear responsibilities upon the state. It also empowers citizens to become more responsible, more innovative, and less vulnerable. For as the bedrock of our democracy, education allows us to challenge and deconstruct preconceived ideas about our society and about ourselves. Education enables us to be audacious in ensuring that we are never, ever afraid to dream big, to take risks, and to take a stand. Significantly, it is precisely this philosophy of giving and of making a contribution that is cultivated in a university. And let us say it loud and clear, and my grandmother would agree, universities are guardians of freedom. And they give us all the tools to make a difference in our immediate surroundings and in the broader world. As your motto, changing lives, improving lives suggests, everyone here has a role to play in this regard. Every gesture counts. So I encourage you all to make good on the knowledge and skills you have acquired at the University of Guelph and other universities for the greater good of all. May happiness and success find you always. Merci beaucoup. Merci infiniment.
Bring them up.